for an entrepreneur? Two reasons. First of all, he sees a need which others don't see. And secondly, he adapts to new circumstances. Almost always in the companies we invest in, the environment changes, the competition changes, the customer needs change, and the entrepreneur needs to adapt and constantly be curious about what's happening out there. Now, what about failure? After all, Curious George, well, he did get into all kinds of trouble. He tried to fly and had to be fished out of the water, and he painted and ruined a room and was chased. If you're curious and innovate, you will sometimes fail. Fortunately, where I live in Silicon Valley, failure is accepted as part of the culture. Few entrepreneurs get it right all the time. Many have a failure or two in their career, and you probably will too. Yet curiosity will help you, even when you seek to rise out of failure. We've talked about the importance of curiosity in the professional realm. Now I want to take a few minutes to talk about the significance of curiosity in personal growth. Curiosity was modeled for me by my parents, and anyone who knows them today, and some of you do, would say they are still very curious people in their mid-80s. I tried to model curiosity for my children. In fact, I felt it was a key character trait that I wanted them to have. So reading and discussion and travel, these were activities which were important in our family. Why? Why is it so important? Why is curiosity so important, particularly in your personal growth? Well, it makes your mind active, not passive. You observe new ideas. In fact, you learn to expect and anticipate and recognize newness. It opens new worlds and possibilities, and it brings excitement into your life. You experience adventure just like Curious George. I hope that your education here at Lakeland has opened your eyes to the possibilities for personal growth. President Gould said that many of you arrived here from high school with your curiosity somewhat dimmed by the schooling you'd received. And a goal of the faculty was to reignite that curiosity by inviting you to ask questions and then gradually make you more and more responsible for critical thinking. If you did discover curiosity and magnify it, keep at it. And if not, keep looking for subjects that might interest you. My wife, Brenda, had a high school experience that may have resembled your own. School did not ignite her curiosity. It wasn't until her early 20s that she enrolled in college. Encouraged by a counselor named Fred, she discovered psychology, and particularly what made children learn and not learn. She went on to graduate at age 27 with 2 young children and earned a teaching certificate at age 32. And then that launched her love affair teaching young children, first in the classroom and then in her piano studio. In my case, I performed very well in undergraduate engineering school, but I wasn't really curious about engineering. In graduate school, I was much more intrigued by business, and after graduating, I sought out a job from a man who was a wonderful business leader from whom I could learn, and that led to my 30-year career in venture capital. One way that curiosity plays out in my personal growth is through books. I love to read, and when the interplay between reading and adventure or experiences is very significant to me. Let me illustrate. Henry Nouwen, a priest and scholar, wrote a wonderful book entitled The Return of the Prodigal Son. It was Nouwen's intensely personal spiritual journey, inspired by Rembrandt's painting of the biblical story of the prodigal son. That book so captured me that when I learned of a cruise around the Baltic Sea, I jumped at the chance to see the painting in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia. Gazing at Rembrandt's masterpiece, I experienced what Henry Nouwen wrote when he first viewed the painting, and I quote from his book, "Its size larger than life, its abundant reds, browns, and yellows, its shadowy recesses and bright foreground. But most of all, the light-enveloped embrace of the Father and Son, surrounded by 4 mysterious bystanders. All of this gripped me with an intensity far beyond my anticipation. End of quote. This impetus for travel has played out countless times as I've explored places where books I've read have led me. Another way curiosity played out in my personal life has been in child raising. I wanted to be the best dad I could, so when I met families where I admired their children, I almost always asked the parents what they did to bring about that result. I learned a lot about being the kind of parent I wanted to be by following my curiosity. I'm sure that if you think about your own lives, you have triggers for curiosity like mine. Maybe it's books or subjects or places you go or people that you admire. I encourage you to let your curiosity light the wick in your candle of learning. Finally, let's talk about the role of curiosity in interpersonal relationships. People are the ultimate puzzles, aren't we? What are other people's motives? What are their histories? What are their own curiosities? Why is it important to be curious about people? Well, first of all, understanding people makes us more effective in everything we do. And secondly, I think it helps us to know and care for other people. What are the preconditions for being curious and effective with people? I'd list two. The first is confidence. Earlier I said that curiosity is what can happen when confidence meets the unknown. And I do hope, again, that your Lakeland education has increased your confidence so that you can face and figure out the unknown. The second precondition, I think, is humility. An arrogant know-it-all cannot be curious. Pride stands in the way. Referring back to Gary Haugen's comments about curiosity in the International Justice Mission, he said, "Arrogance and pride kill curiosity because you think you know it all or you already have it all. And then that creates an impossible barrier to actually relating to people with mutuality, dignity, and intimacy." I'd like to illustrate the importance of curiosity in two very different interpersonal settings. The first was described by my son-in-law, Nathan, who's a behavioral coach for foster children. In his organization, Nathan said curiosity is a key or core value. Why? Well, he gave me the following example. The medical model looks for symptoms in people and then makes a diagnosis and then treatment. And so when a child comes in to see Nathan, who's distractible and hyperactive, the logical diagnosis is that that child has ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And Ritalin is often prescribed. However, children who behave this way may actually have hypervigilance, much like the veteran who comes back from Iraq with post-traumatic stress syndrome. A child who's grown up in an unsafe environment learns to be anxious and constantly scan his environment for threats. Only by being curious and pushing past the obvious diagnosis can a behavioral health professional learn the true nature of a child's problem. A second example of curiosity in relationships is directed not at people we encounter casually, but the people whom we know best. My 28-year-old son, Mark, reacted in this way when asked about the importance of curiosity, and I'll quote him. "My thought on curiosity involves being curious, even within comfortable, well-known relationships and subject areas. The word curiosity tends to spark images of going into a completely new field or totally uncharted territory to discover new things. But I think there is something even more profound about maintaining curiosity in very closed, known, intimate spaces. For example, with your wife, the person you know better than anyone in the world, and yet can still be curious about. To love or to care, you need to know, and to know, you need to be curious. Therefore, curiosity sustains and strengthens love in our most intimate relationships. In conclusion, I hope that your Lakeland education has rekindled your curiosity and that it does carry over into your professional, personal, and interpersonal lives. I close with a little poem that I wrote for this occasion. Were you ever curious about George's brother? Was he inquisitive or bored by another? Did he invent trampolines, hammocks, and swings? Or was he not curious, not caring about things? Did he read books, travel, and ask why? Or just sit in a tree and stare at the sky? I hope that, like George, life isn't a bore, but you're eager to learn, curious to the core. Thank you, congratulations, and George and I wish you a curious future.